comprehensive report published in 2016. This report is cited by Western media outlets. After that, the report informed the China Council Research Center will have broadened the research to help prevent the China's border abuses. In 2017, to increase the accessibility of the report, we produced the Ministerial documentary film. It's all the transport and system. Now I am going to use this film.
China is the most populated nation on earth, home to a booming organ transplant industry. However, over the past decade, reports have emerged that the majority of organs are not sourced from death row prisoners and donations, as stated by officials, but rather from innocent prisoners of conscience, murdered on demand. Researchers across the globe are uncovering new evidence that shows the true nature and scale of these abuses. In June 2016, 3 independent investigators jointly published a 680-page report of irrefutable evidence.
China highlighted the independent world of the government-run industrial program, those people, sells their organs and which hospitals in here, in great detail, large hospital and Wisconsin, transplant surgeries,
I would be our high number, and we had a day, motherboard, hearings were held by the U.S. Congress, the British Parliament, the European Parliament, and the Canadian Parliament. The U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed a resolution condemning the systematic state-sanctioned organ harvesting from non-consenting prisoners of conscience. China's killing for organs is making a major appearance across media outlets all over the world. In 2006, it first came to light that prisoners of conscience were being killed on demand for organ transplants in secret detention facilities throughout China. The first 2 researchers to investigate were David Gilmore, former Canadian Secretary of State for Asia Pacific, and David Mates, an international human rights lawyer.
when we started in 2006, and I didn't know where it was, either one, they went to they were happening throughout China, and it was happening in 2004.
Gilmore and Mates released their first report in July 2006 and later published the book, Bloody Hearts. Around the same time, Ethan Young, an independent investigative journalist based in London, spent 7 years doing his own research before publishing The Slaughter in 2014.
We made them work that it was really prisoners in the page of the book. And we gained, as David over this, I think that it's from very the same conclusion from very using very different procedures, but we didn't come to that conclusion.
The investigators joined forces, researched hundreds of transplant hospitals in China, and released their new report in 2016. The 3 investigators were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for their work. Discovering exactly how large the transplant industry is in China and how many victims there have been is difficult. The researchers spent a decade piecing together the evidence. For example, in September 2013, Director Zhu Jiyan of the Liver Transplant Center at the People's Hospital of Peking University told China Economic Weekly, "Our hospital conducted 4,000 liver and kidney transplants within a particular year."
So we have contact everything. We have both the volume and the contact staff, and good publication, media report. Again, it's a very municipal stuff, and every which way we could, and all we were able to do by all the process and develop the different picture, and that's true. I think basically, I guess, kind of what else to do.
Children's Central Hospital, they are having 500 dedicated. But they were planning the National Communications Center, several of them to be doing 181%. What that means, to get 130 days standing, what it suggests.
These examples show that China's official claim of 10,000 transplants per year is easily surpassed by just a few hospitals. But these two hospitals are just the tip of the iceberg. The investigators found that more than 1,000 transplant hospitals applied for permits from the Ministry of Health in 2007 to continue doing transplants. That suggests these hospitals met the ministry's minimum capacity requirement for transplant centers it certifies.
159 or that's correct. But if you profit is already here, never mind actual estimated, close to 100,000.
The researchers found other evidence of a massive transplant system, some of it from Chinese officials themselves. COHRC, a member of the expert committee of the Human Organ Donation Commission, stated the number of transplants increased by 10 times between 1999 and 2000, and further tripled by 2005. That's a 30-fold increase in 6 years. Mu Hongchao, known as the father of liver surgery in China, told the media in 2011, China now performs the most liver transplants in the world. Since 2000, the entire United States has performed an average of about 6,000 liver transplants a year. This could be matched by just a few hospitals in China.
But they have this endless supply of organs available on demand, and only limited capacity. And so what you saw after 2001 was a huge building of new beds and wings for hospitals for contract. And so that the volume is when it's operating capacity increased year by year.
The report shows that just the 169 hospitals approved by the Ministry of Health could have performed over 1 million transplants since the year 2000. Many more hospitals were also doing transplants despite not having been certified. Organ transplantation has been continuously incorporated into the National 5-Year Plan and has become a high priority in China's national strategy. A large number of organ transplant research and training projects are funded under the major national programs and funds. The investigators found that China International Transplantation Network Assistance Center, CITNET, listed transplant prices for foreigners on its archived website.
Bringing in about $19 billion a year is this industrial transport operation. A lot of money, a lot of hospitals are financing a lot of activities for that. They're watching very, very closely by the top leadership. So it's fully aware. As well as the fact that one we joined one of the British alliance and the Chinese presidency, especially his right hand there. He was the most famous, the least in all of China. During his working work. That's it was a award for doing this. And specifically for coming out with an unusual infection. He did thousands of transplants by his own mission.
CITNET website stated, we need to give all of the thanks to the government for the support extended for our completing such a large number of organ transplants every year. This is a one of a kind in the world. Researchers were particularly struck by one aspect of these transplants. Unlike anywhere else in the world, they were being done on demand. In countries with advanced organ donation and allocation systems, patients must usually wait years for a donor to become available. Yet in China, waiting times are commonly in weeks. The 2006 Liver Transplant Registry report showed that 27% of samples were emergency transplants. That means they found a new liver within days or even hours.
With the goal of 2005, when the patient there has been a top list of patients for human heart transplantation. Casey one day told me that he was told that his insurance company, the Israeli insurance company, to go to China in 2 weeks' time, and he was scheduled for the go heart transplantation. So when I asked him how come such a surgery can be scheduled ahead of time, but somebody who died on the very day of the operation, he said he didn't know, and he went to China and got heart transplantation exactly the day he was born.
One hospital in southwest China claimed to have donors seeking matched recipients, and also promised, in case of failure, we will continue to perform transplants until one is successful. In 2006, a chief surgeon of the Organ Transplant Center at a traditional Chinese medicine hospital published a study of 50 patients at his hospital who had each received kidney transplants 2, 3, or 4 times.
Another example that's, I can't get over my head, but man from the country who went twice. First time he went, they bought him 4 sets of kidneys, and none of the 4 was compatible with him. He went 4 sets, he came back, and they gave him 4 more sets of kidneys. That's only 8 kidneys worth. He saw him, he was going to find it, but 8 kidney games have been killed.
In northeastern China, the International Transplantation Network Assistance Center stated on its website, China carries out kidney transplants from living sources. It's completely different from cadaver kidney transplants in Japan.
Because they have a bank, liability waiting to get an action. It's like a horrible restaurant where you're going to see a lobster. And when that lobster is killed, it's a crime against humanity.
The Chinese government claimed that the vast majority of organs came from death row prisoners and later donations. However, international organizations estimate that the number of death row executions, 1,000 each year, since increasing. Chinese tradition requires that bodies remain whole after death. There was no organ donation system in China before 2010. Even today, there are very few donations. Therefore, these two sources combined account for only a tiny fraction of all transplants performed in China. China started performing transplants with organs harvested from executed prisoners at a small scale in the 70s. In the years that followed, it also started using organs from prisoners of conscience.
In 1999, the crackdown on Falun Gong starts. That is the largest action scale by the Chinese Communist Party since the Cultural Revolution. And by 2000, 2001, that's when we have this explosion of transplant. We see accountability and others over time. Falun Gong is a, as I call it, it's kind of a Buddhist revival. It doesn't have churches and so forth. What it has is sort of common beliefs.
These shared beliefs revolve around self-improvement based on the values of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. By the end of the 1990s, the Chinese government estimated that over 70 million of its citizens were practicing Falun Gong. Jiang Zemin, the head of the Communist Party at the time, saw Falun Gong's popularity and revival of traditional values as a threat to his rule, and launched a violent campaign to eradicate it in July 1999. Hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners from all over China traveled to Beijing to appeal to the central government, only to be arrested and tortured. When many refused to disclose their identities to protect their families and friends, they became part of a large anonymous population held captive by the state. More practitioners were rounded up all across China. This is when large numbers of them started disappearing without a trace.
The official line in terms of repression on the party is that of them financially ruining their reputations to start theories, so that the ability to destroying their reputation, the organ transplants is destroying it. There is the physical examination, the blood testing, the organ examination, which have no other explanation than suitability for the transplant.
These are converted or die. Convert or die. Turning your friends or die. It says so. We did not expect after the war to see this kind of medical corruption.
How can doctors, people trained to heal, harvest organs from living people for transplants? Educated and raised in China, Enver Tohti is an ethnic Uyghur surgeon currently living in London. He was told to extract the organs from a living prisoner in 1995.
They make you disabled to think yourself. My whole body just become a robot, just perform to do what I had programmed to do. So anybody, if they label it themselves other than communism, Communist Party, for example, then they will be treated as an enemy of the state. Therefore, they are not even qualified as human beings. And therefore, they are subject to whatever punishment is available. They may even genuinely believe what you are doing is for a good cause, which is little later. I realized I should shorten this man's life. That is equal to a killer. Kill him. And these things haunting me. I have to tell the world to release the things inside my heart to get a little relief.
In February 2017, Freedom House, an international human rights watchdog, published its own report on religion in China. It noted that a review of available information regarding organ transplants had found credible evidence suggesting that beginning in the early 2000s, Falun Gong detainees were killed for their organs on a large scale. It added that the large-scale disappearance of young Uyghur men, accounts of routine blood testing of Uyghur political prisoners, and reports of mysterious deaths of Tibetans and Uyghurs in custody should raise alarm that these populations may also be victims of involuntary organ harvesting.
I think the first thing before you believe or you decide whether what you want to believe, you have to know the facts. The facts are there, the books are there, the research is there. Read it. Once you read it, I'm sure there will be no other way for you to believe it. And we have to read. I'm talking about religion, and all to be together in order to start it. Until 2005, we didn't have no law. I found out that the Israeli insurance company and HMOs have been providing reimbursement, full reimbursement for these transplants of Israelis who went to China and got these illegal organs. So together with my friends, we sat down with our parliament, and the Israeli government has enacted the organ transplant law, which totally bans any reimbursement of illegally obtained organ transplantation anywhere around the world. And since then, not a single Israeli patient went anywhere to China.
In addition to Israel, Spain, Italy, and Taiwan have passed laws restricting their citizens from traveling to China to receive an organ transplant from an illicit source.
The systematic government-sponsored harvesting of organs is a monstrous crime.
I strongly believe that the 17-year campaign to eradicate Falun Gong will be seen as one of the great shames of recent Chinese history.
Since I've been a student of Holocaust, I feel that to a certain extent, what we're seeing is just a continuation of what we saw there in another form. You see the endless, bottomless depravity of human nature. I mean, there's no limit to the form of evil that people can sink.
When I was writing this letter, I sometimes said though on writing history, and then at the end of it, I realized I wasn't. It was actually still going on. This is a new form of genocide, and it's using the most respected members of society to implement it. This is one of the central tests of our time. We can't avoid this any longer.
Yeah, after 2007, we continue to unearth the facts and strengthen the body of evidence we built during the past decade. Especially after 2015, the Chinese regime claimed it entirely transitioned from sourcing lethal prisoners' organs to the voluntary donation system. We spent 2.5 years digging into how the organ transplantation and donation system was implemented. In 2018, we released a new 300 pages report at the annual conference of the International Transplantation Society in Spain. This report is titled "Transplant Abuse Continue in China Despite Claims of Reform." You can find this report on our website at chinaharvest.org. Then we continue to explore the victims and the driving forces of China's illicit organ harvesting. When all the facts and the evidence are put together, it became clear that the Chinese Communist Party's campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, which has lasted for near 20 years, is the background of the Chinese organ crimes and fully fulfill the criteria for the genocide and the crime against humanity. The new 2019 report includes a summary of our previous findings and the recent developments in China's organ transplantation system since 2016. It also includes the testimonies of the relatives of suspected organ harvesting victims and other missing persons, as well as the survivors who were detained and tortured in China for their religious beliefs. We also apply the facts to international laws. So we provide this report to facilitate the policymakers with efforts to develop an effective response to these extreme crimes, to support justice and ensure accountability. So today, I will bring the details about the new report, the 2019 report, and we'll pass it to Anne to give the explanation.
What I'm going to tell you is
reiterating what you heard in the video, which is sometimes difficult to catch everything they're saying. So we try to emphasize some of those points. I'd like to discuss the characteristics of China's transplant system, the system capacity, go over that a little bit again, and again the organ sourcing. So it's very unusual, the only country in the world where transplant operations are actually scheduled in advance. It's the shortest wait times for organs anywhere in the world, going from days to weeks rather than years. And organs are procured from living sources, not from people who have died after their heart stopped or after their brain is damaged beyond repair. So they're not brain dead nor cardiac donation after cardiac death. And here's this quote that we will continue to perform transplants if we want to successfully not charge for routine surgeries in case of failures. The hospital website talked about having donors seeking match recipients. So they're flushed with donor organs. In 2005, you heard Dr. David Levine talk about his patient who traveled to China who was actually paid for by the Israeli insurance. And it took one surgeon to wake up to that, to cause the country to enact legislation, just one man. So one person can make a real difference. And then another example is in 2013, a hospital was performed 4 heart transplants simultaneously in one afternoon. What's the likelihood of 4 people dying and being available to give their hearts, being suitable as heart donors in one afternoon? And then in 2006, a hospital did 5 liver transplants and 6 kidney transplants at the same time. That means they had 11 operating rooms going on this operation simultaneously. Then, even as recently as October 2016, there was a hospital that performed 16 transplants, 10 heart, liver, and kidney, and 6 cornea in one day in the same hospital. And the scale of this is critical. There are incredibly short wait times. This is just a graphic representation. In the United States, in blue here, you wait anywhere from 3 to 4 years. In the United Kingdom, in yellow, you wait very close to that, too, over 3 years. Whereas in China, the wait time is often measured in days.
So, Anne, if you want us to look at slides, we'll have to reconnect, but I think we can understand even without them.
The slides are not being shown anymore. The tech fellow here to help? Yeah. While he's talking, the next point is the fact that Chinese hospitals brag about the fact that their organs come from living sources. And there's a quote from the hospital, from Chinese Medical University's hospital, that in China we carry out living donor kidney transplants. It's completely different from the donor kidney transplants compared to Chinese hospitals and dialysis. So here they're bragging about having a very supply of living kidneys. Well, a living organ has to come out of a human being who's still alive when it's cut out. But in 2004, in China, there were only 64 living kidney donations on record. And in 2005, there had only ever been 73 living liver donations. In the United States here, it's common for people, they can just give a lobe of the liver to someone who's closely related to them or is them matched, and the liver can regrow. So living liver donations are much more common in the United States, but that's partial. In China, they transplant the whole organ, and so its whole liver is taken out and died. And between 1972 and 2006, in all of China, there were only 700 donor kidney transplants in that 40-year time span. The organs are also procured en bloc. You understand what that means? That means that in China, they developed the technique very early in the 2000s to rapidly open a body and literally gut and carve out all the abdominal organs at once, so that the time that the organs are without blood flowing through them, or the warm ischemic time, is somewhere between 0 and 5 minutes. That can only happen if the person is alive, you cut their abdomen open, just the physical time it takes. That, of course, would kill anyone that happened. And they bragged about it. There's a screenshot of the department here of the China National Transplant Network Assistance Center in 2004 saying our department adopts peritoneal quick combined cutting technique to cut the liver, shorten the time before ischemia, reduce the rate of organ rejection, and facilitate recovery of graft function. So this practice of curing organs en bloc from living sources became the norm in the practice of transplant surgery in China very rapidly. And there are many, many medical papers that have been published that describe and cite warm ischemic times of between 0 to 10 minutes. That can only happen if a live person is vivisected on an operating table across the hall from the recipient who's getting it. There's no other way that the warm ischemic time can be that short. Then let's talk about the capacity again. We heard in the video talking about the capacity of these hospitals and the exponential increase in the number of beds. Are they seeing the slides now at all?
No, I have to reboot the system.
Oh. Well, in 2006, the Ministry of Health set up regulations and policies for minimum bed counts that transplant centers had to maintain in order to keep their credentials, in order to be able to continue to practice transplant medicine. They had to have a certain number of dedicated transplant beds and dedicated transplant intensive period beds, okay? And they had to have these filled in order to be able to be certified and keep their license to do transplant operations. So even if we figure that, say a hospital has 15 transplant beds and 10 dedicated ICU beds, and they have 25 beds for liver, and 30 for kidney, and 55 for liver and kidney together, those minimum required, if we considered that it takes about a month for a patient to get a transplant and recover. If you have 25 beds and that bed was filled every month, you would perform about 300 transplants a year, correct, for that bed. 25 times 12 is 300. If you have 21 hospitals, that total is going to be 6,300. You multiply that by 15 years of being in business at that low level, not with the exponential increase, you have almost 100,000 just for that one hospital that has 25 beds over 15 years. So if you look at just the few hospitals that were approved to perform liver and kidney transplants by the Ministry of Health, then you still come up with a very conservative number of over 1 million transplants. And that's just assuming that they are operating at 1 transplant a month per bed every year for 15 years. But even these minimum counts may vastly underestimate the number performed. There's a talk now about specific case studies in specific hospitals. The China Tribunal Transplant Organ Transplant Center is one of the largest in China, and it was the subject of an undercover documentary by a Korean TV crew in the fall of 2017. And they went in there and they had video footage where a nurse describes that they had hospital floors, several floors of the building that are dedicated just to foreign transplant tourism and patients who come in from around the world. That hospital had a bed count of 500 in 2003. They've had a bed utilization rate of 90% in 2009, up to 131% in 2013, as you heard on the video. So they could have alone, just with 500 beds, performed anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 transplants a year in that one center. They've expanded to more than 700 beds at present. And there was a hospital in Sun Yat-sen University in 2010 bragged that they had tens of thousands of patients that received liver or kidney transplants at their institution. So those are big, huge hospitals.
But let's look at some smaller hospitals. There is a small hospital called Dongfeng Hospital, and it's associated with an automobile company in Shigan, in a small industrial city in central China. And this is a small, like, community hospital. Well, the vice president is quoted as saying, kidney transplantation is now a routine surgery. Almost all surgeons in our hospitals can independently complete kidney transplantation. They had 10 surgical departments with over 100 surgeons. And in 2000, they conducted 10 kidney and 3 corneal transplants in one day. That means there's a minimum of 13 operating rooms going at the same time. Or they could go, they could do them in the same operating room, but, over a 24-hour period, you need to do several operations in the same operating room. But, this is not just limited to the big university hospitals. Here is a community-type hospital that is, bragging that it's doing such a high volume of transplantation. So it's really just the tip of the iceberg. So in China, what have the factors been that are limiting transplant volume? Well, Huang Zhefu, who's been the spokesperson for the China's organ transplant system for many years, he said that the first reason is economic. Not many citizens can afford the medical costs. Well, they're still selling organs, so who's buying them? Must be a lot of foreign patients with a lot of money to buy them. The second reason he said was that even though we have such well-qualified hospitals, there aren't that many experienced and skilled doctors. So he's saying that one of the things that's keeping China from expanding further is skilled doctors. The third is that there are not that many donor bodies, even though donor bodies are abundant right now. There aren't that many hospitals and that many doctors who perform transplants. So he's saying that the donors are no problem. We have plenty of donors. We have them coming out of our eyeballs. What we don't have trained doctors. And we keep building more and more hospitals. And there's been an incredible expansion of hospitals over the last several years. They keep building more and more wings and expanding at 300 beds, 500 beds, 700 beds. And Huang Zhefu has been quoted as saying that they plan to increase the now 173 approved transplant centers to somewhere between 300 and 500 government-approved transplant centers in just the next few years, really by 2021. So there's an incredible ongoing exponential increase in the transplant industry in China. And what government and what business would put so much money into the infrastructure of building new hospitals, training new staff, hiring new staff, without the secure base of knowing that you've got an unlimited supply of donor organs whenever you want them? Doesn't make business sense. So let's talk about organ sourcing for a minute. Before 2010, there was no organ donation system in China. And almost all of the organs were coming from either death row prisoners or unconscious. And all of those quotes from all of the hospitals, vice presidents, and surgeons that they're doing all these tens of thousands of transplant surgeries was before 2010, before there was any organ donation system. Between 2010 and 2015, after the news had broken on the international scene about China's organ harvesting, they started to do a pilot system. And that grew to, in 2013, to a national donation allocation system. And they claimed at that time that almost a quarter of the organs were said to be donated. And then by 2014, they claimed there was a jump from 25 to 80 being donated. And then by 15, 100%. That's 2 years. In the rest of the world, it's taken decades to build a base of millions of registered donors. But you may have registered donors, so they don't all die that year to donate their organs. People register as donors on their driver's licenses, they may not die for another 10 or 20 or 50 years. And when they die, they may not die in such a fashion that their organs are even usable for transplant. From 15 to the present, At the end of 2017, China said it had 375,000 registered donors. But if you compare how large a pool of registered donors you have to be to get a few organs for transplant, it really comes up to go available for that number of registered donors. So it's so few, or even ones that come from ICU patients, would not be able at all to account for the number of organs that are used in surgeries throughout China for the last 20 years. Now, what about the death row executions? What do we know about the number of prisoners that have been executed and whether their organs are taken or not? Well, it's a state secret, so we don't really know. Amnesty International stopped providing estimates on the number of executed prisoners in China in about 2009. But even before that, the number of executions was actually decreasing slightly. And some changes in Chinese law made it such that it was a little bit harder to execute criminals during that second half of that decade. So it was estimated that there were only 10,000 executed criminals in 2000, and that's been steadily decreasing. Here is a quote that before the private voluntary donation system started in 2010, death row prisoner organs were almost the only source for Chinese organ transplants. Our hospital conducted 4,000 liver kidney transplants within a particular year, and all of the organs were from prisoners sentenced to death. Well, a lot of death row prisoners are not suitable organ donors to begin with. They may be drug abusers, they may be alcoholics, they may have hepatitis C, that's rampant from 10,000 or less executed prisoners. Another thing, when people are sentenced to death in China, they need to be killed in 7 days. So you only have 7 days to find a potential recipient for that organ. So if it just doesn't add up, the numbers don't add up. And there are very few willing donors. The first pilot program, they really had less than one donor from the hospital in the first 2 years. And then since the national donation system was established in 2015, there really have been negligible donations listed at the scale in 2015. And if you just look at the United States versus China, you really just the first 2 lines here, the number of registered donors is so much greater, and the people that died from that in China would only be estimated to be about 29. And this chart just shows you the actual donors that are listed per province. But again, how many of these donors are actually going to die? And if they did die and they did donate their organs and they were usable, it would really account for only a very small number of donors per hospital available for transplant, compared to thousands and tens of thousands. The donation system then we really feel it's being used to launder organs that are coming from illicit sources from prison options. Because current regulations have loopholes. There are no laws in China that recognize brain death, and there are no laws that govern organ sourcing, donation, procurement, allocation, and transplantation. Whereas in the rest of the world, it's very open, it's very regulated, and none of that is the case in China. The donation system really is an empty shell. It's really still in its infancy. Culturally, Chinese don't like to donate organs. They believe it to be very cold. So there's really not high stream against cultural warring. One true is quoted saying that the administration of the organ transplantation belongs to 3 billion people, so you bought it for one person. There are thousands of people involved in the United States. Again, the organ procurement organizations are established inside Ministry of hospitals, and they operate without any kind of oversight control. And it's the same surgeons involved in procuring organs that are transplanted. In the rest of the world, that's completely separate. The organ procurement organizations are completely separate from the surgeons that are the transplant team that are going to be transplanting into the recipient. They're completely different. And Huang Zhu said in 2013 13 organ sources, all recipients and donors in the entire chain of organ transplantation are in the hospitals. And there's an abuse of brain death. This is just one example from one article. This is a quote, brain dead male patient. They said, first, the secretions of the respiratory tract were removed. Endotracheal intubation performed for mechanical ventilation. Well, the international rules, and certainly the American Academy of Neurology rules for brain death, the patient's already intubated and on a respirator before you could even declare them brain dead, because an apnea test is one of the criteria. So the fact that this patient had his airway cleared and then was intubated means that his brain stem was working just fine. His brain was alive when this was done. And this is the way you can tell that a lot of these research papers are very unethical. Again, there are more recent investigations that confirm that the organ tourism is thriving in China. This is the October 2017 South Korean TV journalist on-site investigation in Hanjin Hospital, which is really eye-opening. It's very shocking. It's a BBC investigation by Matthew Hill, who actually was told by a hospital to get out of the liver within just weeks. And then the World Organization investigated Ursula Falun Gong, set up a series of phone calls in 2018. And here are the number of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 1 week wait time, all over different hospitals throughout. Additionally, China is expanding into other markets. They are trying to sell organs to other countries. They went to Taiwan, went to Taiwan to propose a cross-strait organ exchange platform in Taiwan. And then the One Belt, One Road initiative was to strengthen cooperation in organ transplantation between China and other parts of Asia, Europe, East Africa, and Japan. And then the agreement that they signed in 2017 is an organ sharing agreement with the Macau Health Bureau, where residents of Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan can register through the Chinese system. And also, in 2017, in the fall, there was an investment group in the United States that donated 100 million RMBs to the Chinese procurement organization, saying that they would strategically cooperate with the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center to employ leading technology and strength in organ transplantation into China. So they're expanding beyond Chinese borders. This was a first open house where China brought foreign dignitaries and surgeons in to see how their system was doing in 2017. And here, they, in 16, the hospital performed 16 transplants in a single day, and they brought personnel from the Oklahoma Transplant Center in the United States who performed 15 transplant surgeries in 24 hours. So there's been recognition of this, despite the lack of transparency. At the Transplant Society's annual congress in Madrid in 2018, despite the allegations of transplant abuses, 150 Chinese experts took part. So what we mean is that the transplant community has actually accepted back into their fold the Chinese transplant community on the basis of the propaganda and lies that they've been told about the changes in the Chinese system. But a review in 2018 of 445 Chinese transplantation research papers in peer-reviewed medical English language journals over almost a decade found that 90% failed to meet international ethical standards, banning publication of research involving biological materials from research. So what's the global implication here? There are a lot of implications for China expanding beyond its borders and implicating and involving other countries' transplantation professionals. Here, Jose Nunez, medical director of the World Health Organization, said in February and August of 17 and 18, international transplantation is like a boat. And for many years, China was swimming outside the boat. Now the boat, with China jumping on board, is moving faster than before. China's efforts are leading them this way. So we need to rethink that.
I know we're running short of time.
Put the mic a little closer.
So I think the main point that, I'm trying to make is that this is a state-led campaign. It's run from the top down. It's institutional. It's conducted in military and civilian institutions and populations, which you can imagine for such a campaign of such scale to occur, for bodies to donors, to medical professionals to be all involved requires top-down coordination to actually achieve this, which is a violation of U.S. laws, international laws, and there's Chinese laws. It's the entire persecution of all colonies and self-reliance is in violation of the Chinese Constitution. So, real quick, this and this is on you. I think to a lot of us, the first killing by the Communist Party for medical purposes actually occurred before they took power in the 40s, and since then, they've gone after leaders, they've gone after prisoners of conscience. The first reported organ harvesting in 1978 by the end of the Communist Revolution, and a school teacher was actually killed. We have organs given to the son of a high-ranking military official. And in the 90s, we heard Dr. Edward Toby talk about how he was actually personally involved in harvesting organs from executed leaders in the 90s. And so, this entire persecution campaign is driven by a state, and the Chinese hospitals themselves are not shy to actually oppose the methods. In addition to the typical ministries of health that you would expect, also the people's courts of regulatory, public security, and judicial system, all of which are involved in this process. Anna's already covered a lot of this. I'm just gonna, the key thing is China became a global leader in organ harvesting within years, when it took other countries decades, about half a century to actually get there. You have, astronomical numbers of transplant volumes, including 30 times in the Swiss, 6 years, when there were no voluntary donors in the system. And the main victims after 2000 is really the following problem. There are a lot of other minority groups as well that Falun Gong is really the source. If you're not familiar with Falun Gong, it's a quick introduction. It's a Buddhist cooperation practice. There's no religious mountains. It's really all around the world. And before the project in 1999, there were estimated of around 70 million practitioners in China. Persecution and then Chinese president has been in violation of Chinese Constitution. And that's a key point. So everything that you're doing here to Falun Gong practitioners, not just supporting policy question, but everything else that they're doing is in violation of Chinese laws. The OM has been crushing politically laws ministries for education, and the party is to achieve 100% vaccination, which means every single Falun Gong practitioner supports the side of that declaration. That's the 10 office, they have the practice, 3 and 2, 10, 9, that's a down actual legal power systematic practice. And this is just a question of showing exactly how it's implemented. We have former Chinese president creating a central meeting group for dealing with the following issue, which then created the central 610 office. And then at each level of government, from the national to the provincial to the local municipal office, we have the 610 office essentially giving words and controlling all of its decisions that are made. And this is key because under international criminal law, in order to actually find one of the three perpetrators liable for net responsibility, so under some work that's done with the U.S. Law Foundation, you can actually be able to prove that this chain of command satisfies that requirement that would actually make a lot of the chief perpetrators liable for persecution, genocide, and crimes against humanity. So all of the violations of international criminal law that those we're talking about, you can actually compute that to the chief perpetrators, as well as the low-level officials who are actually doing persecution. As a result, for instance, we've heard from some of the victims that there's no access to attorneys, no fair trials, the people's courts, the territorial sides, all of the cases at the whims of the party, and even the attorneys who try to defend Falun Gong are still persecuted. So in other words, bodies are cremated without consent. People, if they're killed, it's deemed as suicide, and there's no legal recourse, which is a key factor in what allows all of this to happen. Torture, hundreds of torture methods have been documented on violation of the Genocide Convention. And within direct orders, so OJ Fu, which Anne mentioned just now, the chairman of the National Working Capital, he echoed the party's party line on conducting a political struggle he's talking about. And Aishu Jobu's from head of the PLA's health division actually said he was jumping himself in the order the Protestant he was talking about. One of the key things is the ways that they've been able to get surgeons and medical professionals over the kind of moral barrier to kind of allow them to ease their guilt, against Falun Gong is demonization. They want to say demonization of Falun Gong as murderers, pain Falun Gong as terrorists, dehumanization, saying that sort of things. Falun Gong cancer in society, Falun Gong viruses, all of these things to make surgeons and medical professionals not feel the sort of moral guilt and actually conduct these crimes against humanity. Same thing, this is a former director of a huge hospital that's been at Yunnan University. It just shows a reckless disregard for human life. You don't care who the word is, who's the donor, where it's coming from. So, today it's a state secret, so no one knows exactly how many incarcerated. It's estimated beyond 1 million. Every time we look at prison camps, but also we want to emphasize that in 1999 there were about 70 million Falun Gong practitioners, and the Chinese Communist Party has a database for all of these practitioners. Whenever they take it in, they do that testing, they do off-the-cell testing, they do blood levels and how they can actually picking up if and when there's genetic. More recently, seen the reviews have been subject to genetic testing as well. They see some processes, estimated 24 million readers, and in fact, there are, regrettably, a lot of American companies who are actually involved selling, DNA to the Chinese regime and helping that process. So that I'm going to pass it on to you.
So I will be talking about what this all means in terms of international law.
Can you put the mic closer?
We'll be talking about, very briefly about the China Tribunal, talking about the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity defined by international law. And we're fortunate talking about this, but just last month, the China Tribunal finished 6 months of evidence gathering, witness testimony and deliberation, and determined basically 3 things. China, the Falun Gong practitioners are the main source of organ supplies, that organ harvesting has been going on for years on a large scale, and they found no evidence that this activity is decreasing in any way. And the China Tribunal was a very high-level panel of judges led by Sir Jeffrey Nice, a lawyer and judge with 40 years of experience in Britain. He was the attorney who led the prosecution of Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes after the Yugoslav Civil War. So the China Tribunal's conclusions are neat. With respect to the crime of genocide, Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Punishment of Genocide states that there are basically 3 elements of genocide. One, there have to be acts that are indicative of genocide. They have to be perpetrated against a group that is of the type that is, intended to be protected by the statute, and there has to be an intent to destroy that group in whole or in part. And the acts of genocide, well, we have killing of members of the group causing serious bodily or mental harm. There is ample evidence, much of which has been shared with you today, that there has been murder, extermination, torture, rape, organ harvesting. There's an open and shut case that is saying that acts of genocide have been perpetrated against Falun Gong. The second element is Falun Gong the kind of group that is intended to be protected by the statute, and that is certainly the case. Falun Gong is a Buddhist meditation system that evolved outside of the purview of the Chinese government agencies that manage religion in China, and that may be in fact one of the reasons why it came under close scrutiny and was ultimately targeted. There's no question that the state has a strong interest in transforming practitioners, causing them to renounce their beliefs in Falun Gong. So it's clear that they are the type of group that the statute was intended to protect. There must be specific intent, and specific intent was most clearly stated in June of 1999. The former Chinese president issued orders in a speech to the Politburo to eradicate Falun Gongs and crush them politically, cut them off financially, and destroy their reputation. And that began what is now a 20-year campaign of mass arrests, killing, and torture. The next allegation we have to consider bringing against China is crimes against humanity. And 3 United Nations statutes define it, as well as the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. There are basically 4 elements of crimes against humanity. 1, there have to be acts that are prohibited by the statute. 2, there has to be a widespread or systemic attack against a civilian population with knowledge of the attack. And the Rome Statute says that it has to be part of a organized state policy. Here we have the actual acts prohibited by the Rome Statute. Murder, extermination, ample evidence of both of those exists. Enslavement. There are, again, many prisons, well, almost prisons in China, detention centers produce commercial products that are sold internationally. Think about those holiday decorations if you want. They may have been made by a prisoner of conscience in China. He or she was not paid for that work. In fact, last year, the documentary called Letter from Bosnia was released, and it basically recounted how a family worked hard on Halloween decorations and found inserted a letter saying this ornament was manufactured through forced labor by people who were tortured. And they reported it to the authorities, and in fact were able to find the man who manufactured that letter. Widespread or systematic attacks. The attacks on Falun Gong are global. It's not just confined to the boundaries of China. In fact, in 2004, the U.S. House of Representatives passed Resolution 304 condemning activity by Chinese agents in America against Falun Gong elements, writing letters threatening American politicians who offer support, disrupting Falun Gong activities in America, and breaking in repeatedly into the apartments of Falun Gong spokesmen. This has been documented and dealt with, or at least referred to by the U.S. Congress. Systematic, we are talking about a national, highly organized plan implemented by the 610 office coming ordered by the very highest levels of the government of China. No question with respect to widespread and systematic knowledge of attack for a crime against humanity to find that it has been committed. The party who is perpetrating the attack has to be aware that they are doing it as part of a concerted campaign against it. It can't just be, believing they're committing a random act of violence. And we do, as you saw in the documentary, have some admissions by officials that they were extracting organs from people with the knowledge that they were Falun Gong practitioners, and because they were Falun Gong practitioners. So the people who perpetrated these acts were aware of what they were doing and why they were doing it. State policy, again, we really only have to go back to the 1999 policy of speech from Tanzania. This was directed and was carried out at really every level of the Chinese government. As Ken mentioned, Falun Gong practitioners are not granted fair trials. Attorneys are discouraged from representing them. If they do, they're sometimes stripped of their licenses. If they persist, they're sometimes jailed themselves. It's a basic disenfranchisement of basic rights to counsel and a fair trial. Adding all this together, Sir Jeffrey Nice of the China Tribunal summed it up quite well. He said, taking together such attacks and such acts constitute crimes against humanity, which the tribunal is certain beyond reasonable doubt that occurred. Beyond reasonable doubt is the standard that must be met when proving criminal conduct. And it has been. I'd like to finish this up with a quote from Justice Robert Jackson, who was a U.S. Supreme Court judge, who was the lead prosecutor in the Nuremberg trials. And he said, the wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being organized, being ignored because it cannot survive their people. I think it was true in 1945, and I think it is true still today with respect to persecution going on in China. Thank you.
All right, we have, if there are any questions that the audience would like to raise now, we'll take one or two, we'll probably take them together. We're going to have a short break. I believe coffee will be brought in between, and then we'll start our new program at our next panel at 3:20. So is there any question that anyone would like to raise at this moment? Okay, we'll have to go ahead. We'll gather the vote at the same time. Do we have the microphones? Where are the microphones? Thank you.
I can try to speak out here. I just have a math question. Earlier in the presentation, you said that about 49% of Americans who had dropped off the transplant list voluntarily went to China.
That was one study.
One study. Is there a number that can be listed from that? Or for the number of Americans who might be traveling?
I can give you a copy of that interview article if you'd like that. It was one transplant center, and I can give you that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that question two, other question. Dr. Yang.
I'm from Taiwan. We have already invested all the parties in Taiwan, also in China. And I think the most important thing here is the workflow. What is how they work it out? The donor side, the recipient side, what is the mechanism they are doing this? Because we think if they just insult people, simply just take out the organ from the donor to the recipient. In the time preparation, they are going to face another kidney change. But now, I think including we have some information from Taiwan. It is now the Taiwan government already have around 2,000 to 3,000 people. Registered. This is 3,000. Okay. The people now they went to China to have this operation. And from there, we found they have some technology to do things like this. And we found kind of extracorporeal membrane oxygenator they use it. And that is some sort of uncontrolled water made by company Medtronic. And that is one of the clues we have to investigate. And the technology, how they use it, we have already have some evidence of this part.
Dr. Young, did you want to get comments from the
Yes,
audience,
yes,
or what are you
yes,
raising?
yeah, I need their comment because that is very important part. The workflow, you know, you see the workflow, how is the workflow? They invest, they harvest.
So I think the question, can you please correct me, some of the technological advances, including this technique, ECMO, is one of the things that is facilitating the expansion of China's transplant industry and is also facilitating use of prisoners of conscience.
Actually, from the example just Dr. gave, actually in China, they don't need some kind of advanced technology to fulfill the organ procurement. Because just we gave an example from the journal, they just announce this and then cut off the organs. Very simple. And because in China, for the donors, for the organ sources, it's actually, they don't count it as life. It's very cheap. There's no need to use so expensive equipment with this kind of thing. That's our administration. Maybe there are some cases in very high-end some countries, maybe someone pay a lot of money, they need to return the donors, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But based on our understanding, most of the cases, they don't use that kind of equipment to conduct the organ procurement. And this kind of process.
Right, good. So we're going to take a short break. If just very quickly, go ahead.
Sure.
Very quickly. Actually, why don't we raise that in the next panel? That would be wonderful. All right, so we're going to take a break. We will reconvene at 3:25. We have given ourselves